Hello everybody and welcome back to another weather forecast here by H Weather Forecast. This is yet another video here for today. This is actually going to be focusing on much of the East Coast. This is going to be mainly a threat from now on all the way up into the early weekend. We have a threat for very strong winds with a low-level jet, definitely bringing a ton of wind shear and possibly hurricane force wind gusts across the mid-Atlantic just off the coast of some areas. We also have a huge threat for flash flooding, and with this saturated soil, these winds will easily take down trees and possibly cause power outages and a lot of debris in some areas in the Northeast. Once again, this is going to be mainly a threat for the mid-Atlantic and Northeast. But not only that, we have a severe weather outbreak coming in, or a severe weather threat. We do have a marginal threat today, tomorrow, and we have a general risk all the way up to Saturday. So we do also have a severe weather threat. We can possibly maybe see some small hail. Squall lines are likely, maybe some small QLCSs. And this is where we're going to continue to talk about today and maybe even tomorrow. So we're definitely going to be seeing very strong potential for a ton of issues throughout much of the mid-Atlantic, Northeast, and then also, of course, the Southeast today. But if you are new to the channel, be sure to hit the subscribe button. We are so close to 2,210 subscribers, so please hit that. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you get notified as soon as I post a video, so you have new and important data or information. And also be sure to share the channel to any friends or family so you can keep people weather aware. But without further ado, let's get into this video. So we're going to be looking at the National Weather Service because we already have a couple alerts ahead of this system here. So we already have severe thunderstorm warnings coming off close to the Alabama coast and off the Florida coast there in the Panhandle. That's because we have these pop-up bands that are going to be already heading up to into the southeast area again. Here we're going to be seeing these pop-up storms. They're going to start strengthening as they get past the Metro Atlanta area. Also seeing these very strong linear bands throughout the Tennessee and Ohio Valley, which we'll continue to talk about throughout today in this video. But here we have a ton of we have millions under flood watches now across the North Carolina border with South Carolina all the way up into the areas near Utica, New York, and then we also have much of Pennsylvania and the Mid-Atlantic are under these flood watches in the green counties. So of course we're gonna be seeing a ton of rain, possibly 2 to 4 inches are likely in areas like New York and scattered areas in New Jersey. Delaware and Maryland can also be getting hit really hard this rain. And we also have a couple million people as well under wind advisories across the East Coast. I actually predicted this. To happen on Monday and also yesterday. So I'm glad I was actually right, because we're going to be seeing a huge low-level jet. They're going to bring a ton of wind shear throughout the across the areas in the Northeast, which is going to be causing these potential squall lines. Although we don't have any Cape Valleys or really strong Cape Valleys whatsoever, or any, of course, Gulf moisture flow, this is exactly why we have a limited threat there. But of course, we're going to be possibly seeing hurricane force wind gusts off areas into New Jersey, in Delaware, and possibly New York, and all the way up to the New England area. We'll be seeing some very strong wind gusts. So this is not going to be a little thing or a little event. This is actually going to be a very big event where we can be seeing millions under power outage without power. Of course, flash flooding is a threat, and also potential severe weather. Not necessarily looking we have a huge tornado threat, but it's still very likely. Here we're going to be looking at the day one outlook here. So as you can tell, they did take down a slight risk out here for the southeast today. I actually strongly disagree. I think these bands were. I think we had a wind strong enough and strong enough bands to keep this slight risk. But I guess they just didn't see anything. But my map earlier today was actually correct and accurate. They did extend this marginal to Virginia and even Kentucky and even more into Tennessee, like I forecasted. Not exactly 100% accurate, but it's somewhat an improvement. We have a little risk out here in the Pacific Northwest, our first really risk this year. But again, not be seeing much of a threat. Scattered thunderstorms, possibly some strong linear bands. Again, this is going to be throughout today all the way to Saturday. This severe weather is going to be more of a wind threat. So definitely that's where we're going to be seeing the squall lines. It's going to be more of a wind threat. Also downpours and wind threat. And of course, flash flooding is our primary threats. Hail. And of course, tornadoes are in the lower threat throughout much of the next 2 days. But of course, doesn't exactly mean we're not going to be seeing any tornadoes. So don't rule that out. But here we have our 2% chance for today. It has shifted now a bit more to the south, including areas of the Panhandle of Florida, much of central and southern Georgia, maybe areas in northeastern Georgia, much of South Carolina, even all the way up into the North Carolina areas near Charlotte. So that's where we have our highest risk for tornadoes. Again, 2% chance is not high whatsoever, but you can't rule that out. And we actually have our biggest hail threats actually for Oregon and Idaho, which is actually quite surprising. So we'll have to monitor those bands very closely there. And then our wind threat, I think this wind threat should be a lot higher, but I guess you could say because the jet stream or the low level jet hasn't the really wind shear isn't impressive as of right now. We're gonna be seeing more of this wind shear and really sustained winds more of the northeast and mid-Atlantic. Now into tomorrow's severe weather, like I said, only have a marginal. I would not doubt the extended marginal up to Pennsylvania and New Jersey. We're going to be seeing some possibly very large squall lines with a very strong and powerful winds. These bands can be moving at the 40 miles per hour, 40 miles per hour. So this is definitely going to be seeing some very, very fast moving storms, which is of course going to cause a lot of downpours and possibilities for damaging wind gusts. Very likely that's marginal will move more to the mid-Atlantic. Of course, we have a marginal threat the mid-Atlantic areas in Virginia, areas into southern Maryland, eastern North Carolina, even areas into northeastern, more like, northeastern South Carolina, or just eastern Carolina there near Myrtle Beach. And then we have a little bit of risk for Florida because we will be seeing these bands. We're going to be seeing, again, like I said, really large squall lines all the way from Florida up to areas in New Jersey. Again, it won't be all one squall line, so it's not going to break the record for the biggest squall line as of what I know. But, of course, we still have that possibility for some multiple squall lines across the coast, even the Atlantic. 2% chance for hail, 2% chance for tornado. Hail threats minimal. Our highest risk will actually be in the Pacific or in the Northwest as well, including Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, and Oregon. This is your first hail threat of the year, and the wind threat's also going to be quite. I think it should be a little bit higher for day 3. I think that's what we've seen, that general risk in areas in the vicinity of the Northeast, and maybe even seeing a bit more of a severe weather threat starting up out here into the west and getting to the plains. Now we're going to be looking at the NAM3KM model here to see these very strong bands and see exactly how long and how severe they can be. So, of course, right now our primary threat for today is severe weather, of course, and also seeing that flash flooding continuing. But here we have these very strong linear bands continuing to Kentucky and Tennessee. That's exactly why they did extend that general or that extended marginal risk. And, of course, we're going to be seeing mainly heavy rain, some thunder too throughout Georgia. But as we now get into Thursday morning here, the overnight hours, these bands get a lot worse. Of course, we'll be seeing these bands stretching all the way from the Ohio Valley up into the areas near, of course, near the Panama City area. So very, very large bands, of course, as well. Eastern Georgia, you guys can get hit pretty hard as well. It's going to be more of an overnight threat into the morning. And as we do continue now as we now continue, of course, into now tomorrow, of course, there's going to be a very widespread threat all the way from the Pennsylvania area to Florida. Very large bands. We're going to be seeing more of a squall line for Florida and southern Georgia, and seeing some scattered thunderstorms throughout Virginia near Roanoke, Winston-Salem, areas near Columbia. And this is where things get a bit interesting right here. We're going to be seeing a low pressure system now strengthening. We will be seeing this low level jet, of course, going to bring some really strong winds throughout these areas as well. Not seeing extreme amounts of energy whatsoever in these bands, but that wind shear will really help. As you can tell, look at these millibars. They're incredibly close here. So when you see these millibars right so close to each other like that, that does indicate extremely strong winds here. That's possibly could be tropical storm force winds or faster. And that's going to be heading straight into the areas of the Northeast and New England coast. And this is going to be seeing the potential for squall lines now. Definitely a threat for squall lines throughout areas near Virginia Beach, Newport News, areas into getting closer to Dover, Harrisburg, areas in Pennsylvania. And you guys had that threat for very fast moving storms. You can kind of see why exactly it is a squall line, because you have that heavier precipitation kind of very close to the front. So you're going to be seeing very possibly some soft clouds are likely, but very, very big severe weather risk now for areas like Dover. Very big severe weather threat for Pennsylvania, New Jersey. Here you have the defined low pressure system. But here we have these winds now getting straight into these areas now. Look how close they are. It's extremely close. That is indicating extremely strong and force winds there. And that severe weather risk does continue out to Friday in the New England area. You guys definitely be seeing a flash flooding threat. Not going to be seeing really squall line threat, but the winds they will be strengthening as these systems do advance to the east in the vicinity of Maine and Nova Scotia. Now, as we look into the HRRR model here for the southeast here, as you can tell, we have these pop-up systems throughout Georgia, Macon, Atlanta, of course, a very strong linear band out there into Tennessee and Kentucky. As we move forward into tomorrow, these bands do move to the vicinity of the Carolinas, heading towards Columbia, Florence, heading towards Raleigh. We had a very strong and heavy rain. Of course, flash flooding is a threat throughout those Carolinas near and those valleys in the Appalachians near Asheville and Boone. That's exactly why we had those flash flood watches advanced there. And then we had possibly a threat for some squall lines moving to the Florida area by tomorrow. Definitely be seeing a very big threat for strong pop-up storms with of course, the amount of moisture and the humidity. Because actually, if you guys didn't notice, the Gulf moisture and humidity did move to the northeast, so now it's heading straight over the Gulf and Big Bend area. Yesterday it was right here, so this is exactly why we're going to be seeing very large squall lines and pop-up bands throughout areas into Miami, Palm Beach, Orlando, Tampa. Definitely be seeing that threat continue on, and then we'll be seeing, of course, heading towards the Newport area, heading towards Kitty Hawk, into the Mid-Atlantic. Now to, of course, now the northeast and mid-Atlantic, of course, this will be that severe weather risk. And it's going to be more of a mainly wind threat, of course, primary, and then flash flooding. And here we have that mainly heavy rain throughout the Ohio Valley areas. We're going to be seeing very heavy rain out here into Charleston, areas near Lexington, areas near Boston, Ohio. That's going to bring a threat even near Youngstown. As we now move the next 24 hours, these bands do advance. They will start to get a bit stronger here with that low pressure system laying it right off Lake Erie. And here we see multiple bands here that are going to be mostly in a linear line. Of course, we're going to be seeing scattered areas because we do have, of course, that low pressure system bringing rain all over the place out there throughout Ontario and other areas all the way up into the Maine border with Canada. And then as we move, of course, now into Thursday or tomorrow, things get a bit more interesting later in the day for areas like Washington, D.C. or south of Washington, D.C., areas near Baltimore. You see that threat as well, getting to see that heavier rain now as these bands do move into the vicinity of Allentown, the Poconos area, Hershey, moving towards Lancaster. Definitely be seeing those bands really strengthening, and then we see the very heavy rain and these potential squall lines. You can actually kind of see these squall lines because you're seeing how fast they are moving in 1 hour, and you can see the heaviest precipitations right on the border with really the heaviest rain is like right at the start. That is showing you that we have more of a windstorm, and you can kind of see this. It's like a straight line like that. That's where we're going to be seeing really some shelf clouds are likely there. That's indicating a potential QLCS. Or of course a squall line, and that's going to be heading towards Dover, Atlantic City, Newark, Livingston, heading towards Hartford, and then we've seen the more of a kind of just heavier rain threat and flash flooding for Maine and the New England area. Now into the wind gusts. This is where things are going to get very, very interesting. So here we have already maximum wind gusts at 60 miles per. Oops, I did not mean to do that. Here we have let's actually go to the next 12 hours here. So here we have our maximum wind gusts here at 60 miles per hour here. I do apologize. I was actually answering a chat from someone here. But this is where we see winds really starting to strengthen. Again, a lot, very, very impressive. A 60 mile per hour wind gusts all the way into the Lake Michigan area. Here you're going to see these, again, you're going to be seeing these winds all over the place. There's a ton of winds. You're going to be seeing these winds from every direction here. It's just going to be absolutely crazy. And this, we're going to be seeing a lot of winds here. And here we're going to be seeing already possibly 40 to 50 mile per hour wind gusts throughout areas in New York. And seeing very strong wind gusts, like I said, I showed you in the radar. We do have these winds and the ice bars moving straight into the coastal areas right here. That's going to be hitting New York, Delaware, Maryland straight on with very, very powerful winds. And let's actually see how bad it's going to be in the future. So here we're going to continue to move on in the next 24 hours. And as you see, winds just completely just go psycho here. We're going to be seeing, you can just see, look at these areas going all over the place. We're going to be seeing just a ton of wind shear here. And you're about to see that in the bulk shear and all that. But within 12 hours, we see winds strengthen a lot. And just look at this area. Just see how close these areas are. You're gonna definitely be seeing a ton of wind gusts if you're New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York. And again, we're having saturated soils. This is going to take down trees easily. We're going to take down power lines. Of course, we also have flooding threats. This is going to be really crazy. And we've seen this in the past couple of weeks now. So it's starting to be a bit of a normal, but does not mean it's not going to be crazy, or it doesn't mean exactly it's going to be the same. We're going to be seeing 40 to possibly 60 knots throughout areas across New York, and winds just get even worse. Now getting 71-mile-per-hour wind gusts, getting closer and closer to hurricane force winds, getting possibly 60 knots or 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts throughout Delaware, areas into eastern Maryland, and even starting to see the winds starting to strengthen a bit more into the New England area as these systems do move eastward. That's going to bring around 40 to 50 knots at those higher elevations in the Adirondacks, areas into the Appalachians, Mount Washington, and then winds get a lot worse now for areas into the areas of Massachusetts. We're going to be seeing, of course, possibly very strong tropical storm force winds in these areas. Now, time to look at the winds here. This is definitely going to show you exactly why we're seeing these very strong winds. So here we have this low pressure system around right here in Illinois, St. Louis area right now. And this is definitely here we have, let me just point out this low level jet. It's going to dip right down here and then straight up. We're going to be seeing the really strong winds out here, moving towards, of course, the southeast. This is exactly why we have that severe weather threat today. And this is exactly why I thought the severe weather risk will be a bit higher, because of the wind threat's going to be very high. But I guess we could have been overestimating this. And it's exactly why now we're going to be seeing these very powerful winds now coming throughout the northeast. Very strong amounts of wind shear here. This low jet's definitely strengthening a lot right here. Dipping down right here, of course, I have that low pressure system off of the areas in Michigan. That's where I have these multiple pop-up storms, and this is going to get a lot of wind throughout the mid-Atlantic. That's going to cause a lot of a threat throughout millions out there into the northeast. Going to be seeing around, of course, 118 knots, possibly 103 knots, of course, throughout in those higher areas in the atmosphere. Now let's go ahead and check out the rainfall totals really quickly. Again, this is not going to be, of course, anything impressive, but of course, it's still a lot of rainfall for this time of the year in these areas. It's going to be getting up to 5 inches out here into southern New York and even scattered areas in New Jersey. You can see around 3 to 5 inches. That's going to go all the way up into Georgia, up to the main area, where we have this really strong amounts of rain and possibly tropical-like downpours in these areas. It looks like areas into New Jersey, Connecticut, New Jersey, and New York definitely get hit really hard these rains, and just add that up with tropical storm force winds. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Everybody stay safe, and I'll have more updates on this later.